All right, it's time for us to get started tonight. We're hoping to finish Daniel chapter 4. David told me that I have chapter 4, really the interpretation of the dream, starting in verse 19. And so we'll do a short recap, but nothing real major because of what we've already talked about here in class. I made an outline for us if you're interested in taking down the outline. The decree in verses 1 through 3, we're not going to read about it, but just giving an outline so that you can have some context if this is your first time here in chapter 4. The dream that Nebuchadnezzar has and provides is in verses 4 through 8. And then as we get into our section, we'll be in verses 19 through 27, and then following, taking a look at the interpretation. And so Nebuchadnezzar is having now his second dream that's recorded for us in the text. And this dream is somewhat similar to the first dream that we read about in Daniel chapter 2. Although when it comes to Bible study and commentators, this dream seems to be more straightforward in the commentator's mind than Daniel chapter 2. Of course, Daniel chapter 2, generally your commentators, especially those from denominationalism, are going to take a inappropriate premillennialist route there towards the end of the chapter, in the end of the dream, where this one seems to be very straightforward. Most people agree on the totality of the meaning of the dream. There are some particulars in which people would debate and discuss, although those in and of themselves are not of great importance, especially for us in our study tonight. Let's see here. Okay. Got it. And so we're looking at the interpretation in verses 19 through 27. And just to give us information about how we got to this point, Nebuchadnezzar has this dream. It says in verse 5, it says that this dream made him fearful. He had seen these fantasies, he had seen these visions when he laid his head on his bed, and he kept having these things coming to him, and they kept alarming him, as verse 5 says. So in verse 6 it says, I gave a decree to bring into my presence all the wise men of Babylon, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Now this is different from what we read in chapter 2, where in chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar provides the fact that he had a dream, but he doesn't tell the wise men what the dream is. In this text, we see that he does provide the dream and what it is, the details of the dream, and he simply wants them to interpret that information for him. And I think one of the things that we see here is some people this is one of the debates, is do the wise men understand the dream in its interpretation and they're too scared to tell Nebuchadnezzar what he is seeing, or do they not understand the dream and therefore they can't tell him what he is saying? I think you can make an argument for both. And one reason why is because of Daniel's reaction after hearing the dream itself, his response to the king. We'll talk about that as we get there. Verse 7, it says, the magicians, the conjurers, the Chaldeans, the diviners came in, and I said to them the dream to them, but they could not make its interpretation known to me. Now keep in mind here, we're reading a first-person vantage point from Nebuchadnezzar. This is Nebuchadnezzar and his words. This is being recorded, of course, by Daniel, by inspiration, but Nebuchadnezzar is in the first person here. He is providing them. But then you have this interesting statement at the end of verse 7, but they could not make known its dream or its interpretation to me. Is it because they didn't know it, or because they weren't willing to know it? As I mentioned, we'll find that as we continue on through the text. You have the dream being now told to Daniel, verse 8 and following, and then we get to verse 19, where Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, here's the information and now is going to provide this information to the king Nebuchadnezzar. As you get into verse 19, we'll break down the text a little bit. Right? Yep, we'll break down the text a little bit. His interpretation is found in his explanation, verses 19 through 26. And so verses 19 through 26, we'll begin reading here, and we'll make some pauses and discuss some of the details in which Daniel hears and in which Nebuchadnezzar provides. It says, "Then Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, was appalled for a while as his thoughts were alarming to him." Now, if you have, I believe, the New King James Version, maybe the King James Version, it doesn't say for a while, it says for an hour. And one of the reasons why is because of the text that they use in that translation. There's a certain word that's used in the Greek translation from this information, which would indicate an hour. It's for a while or for an hour. I believe that what we're looking at here is probably the longest moment of time in Nebuchadnezzar's life, at least from the perspective of wanting to know information. He provided this information to Daniel, and what was Daniel's response to it? It troubled him. It appalled him. This wouldn't be the first time, and it wouldn't be the last time. He was concerned with what he saw previously. He's concerned here. And we see in Daniel chapter 10, going through chapter 12, he's greatly concerned by what he hears from the vision, or what he sees in the vision, in regards to the 70 years of captivity from the Babylonian people, of course, there, Nebuchadnezzar in his information, or excuse me, not Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel and his information being provided at that time. But here it says that he was appalled, he was scared, it was alarming to him. And so he was there for a while with his thoughts. I believe what we see from the rest of the verse is the thoughts that he had. If you continue reading, it says, "The king answered and said, Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its interpretation alarm you." He sees the response that Daniel has, and he goes to comfort him. And I believe one commentator pointed out the fact that Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar, I don't know if they were close friends. They seem to have a good relationship. They seem to have some sort of friendship. But you have two individuals who are working close with one another on a daily basis. And when that happens, regardless of if a person is of your same mindset or your same ideas or your same religious perspective, in this instance, you're going to become close to those people as you work day in and day out with them. And so Nebuchadnezzar gives this information. Daniel's alarmed, and then Nebuchadnezzar comforts him, at least at this moment in time. And he says, "Don't let the dream alarm you." In essence, Daniel, just tell me what you understand. Now notice Daniel's response here. "Belteshazzar answered and said, My lord, if only the dream applied to those who hate you, and its interpretation to your adversaries." Daniel's alarmed because he knows that the dream is connected to who? Nebuchadnezzar. And this is why he's worried about it. Now, you could say he's worried on a couple different levels. Who wants to tell the king bad news, right? Maybe this is why the wise men couldn't make known the interpretation. That's one of the arguments that people provide. Maybe the wise men understood the dream. They understood its interpretation because it seems to be pretty straightforward, but they were worried about how they would tell the king that he's the tree and that these bad things are going to happen to him. Either way, Daniel knows this information, and he flat out says, if only this dream applied to those who hate you and its interpretation to your adversaries. Nebuchadnezzar should get, at least at this moment in time, an understanding of the general detail. This isn't looking good. So Daniel goes in to describe what he sees and the information surrounding that, the interpretation of it. Verse 20, "The tree that you saw, which became large and grew strong, whose height reached to the sky and was visible to all the earth, in whose foliage was beautiful and its fruit abundant, and in which was food for all, under which the beasts of the field inhabited, and whose branches the birds of the sky dwelt." Notice what he says in verse 22, "It is you." This is not uncommon. Daniel has used the same type of response in a little better situation, going back to chapter 2, where you have this great image, this great statue that is there. And he says, "You, O king, you're the head of gold." Now, what did that lead Nebuchadnezzar to do? What did he do in chapter 3? He said, "You know what? I'm the king. I'm the head of gold. I'm going to build a massive statue that's covered in gold, or that is full gold." I have a hard time imagining in my mind a statue that is described of that stature that is full gold. Could you imagine the wealth that it would take to do something like that? Even covered in gold, the wealth that it would take to do something like that. Nebuchadnezzar hears this good news, and, I'm the king, I'm the head, I'm gold, I'm going to build up this great statue. Here, once again, he provides the same statement to Nebuchadnezzar. It is you. This is remnant, at least in my mind, one of the first things that pops up is the prophet Nathan as he's speaking to Daniel. You remember, or excuse me, to David. You remember as David has sinned in regards to his relationship with Bathsheba. He sinned in regards to her husband Uriah. He's been involved now in a plot to murder. And the prophet comes before David and says, hey, I want to tell you a story. And he provides them the story about this little ewe lamb, and someone has stolen this ewe lamb, the rich man has. And Daniel says this guy needs to be punished and so on. And what was the prophet's response? You're the one. You're the man. Now, once again, frightening to make that sort of response, because if you tell a king very bad news, generally speaking, a king has the right to take care of you, to off you, to kill you, right? To remove you from this plane of existence. But these are not individuals, talking about Daniel, talking about the other prophets, who are necessarily worried about their life. They're worried about representing God's word and representing his prophecies in truth and integrity and honesty. And I believe this is a great lesson for us, at least at this moment in time. This is a difficult thing. It's appalling in Daniel's mind, and yet he still has to faithfully represent God and his interpretation and his word at this moment in time. What are some examples? What are some times where we may be in a similar situation as Christians in our life?
No doubt in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
your boss wants to hear the good news, right?
Right.
Maybe you tell them a little white lie, or
Right.
tell them everything's good when it's not good. You're just trying to look out for your best interest.
Right. Yeah, in general life, the white lie comes up. And I think that you could definitely see where Daniel could have utilized that and made this a little softer, so to speak. And that's a common thing, You have to provide information with honesty and integrity. That's a very good point. What other opportunities?
I think like in Bible studies with people,
Yep.
eventually you kind of reach a crossroads, and it's like where you got to ask like the hard question and everything, like have you done this to be saved, or whenever you're telling them like there's gonna have to be some changes they need to make in their life to actually be in a right relationship with God, like that just it gets to that point where it's just falling
Right.
in your face with that.
Yeah, in a Bible study, in an evangelism situation where you're trying to help people through the conversion process, studying through the Word, and you have to come to a point at some point in time in that study, whether it's repentance or whether it's what you need to do and some of the realizations that people have. What are some other opportunities? I think about it from a preacher standpoint. No one likes to hear a sermon on marriage, divorce, and remarriage. No one likes to hear a sermon discussing some of the things that happen in the world around us, like homosexuality and things like that. Those aren't fun topics to discuss. Those aren't fun topics to preach on. But Paul said to Timothy very clearly, preach the word, be instant in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, and exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. Yes, sir.
It's just kind of like whenever Paul was talking to Peter, whenever he was demonstrating his
Yep.
hypocrisy, and he says, stand condemned.
Right.
And now to get Peter on the right track.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing with David.
Right.
Because he needed to repent for what he did.
Right.
And honestly,
Absolutely.
he still paid with the consequences of Absalom, Adonijah, Amnon first before Absalom. It was just a mess of his
Right.
And I think it was to show David, this is what your entitlement did to your own family.
Right. Yeah, his family line was definitely murky because of his activity.
And I think it's kind of the same thing with Nebuchadnezzar because of your pride and things you did. And
Right.
I think it just comes full circle for repentance.
Right. And I think we would be missing a vital point if we didn't consider Daniel's heart in this equation. Yes, you need to be faithful to God's word, in Daniel's instance, to God's prophecy, to presenting God's message, even in the tough situation. But what type of heart is Daniel dealing with here? Is it a heart of joy that he's pronouncing this downfall to King Nebuchadnezzar? It hurts him. I believe when we talk to people, whether it's in an evangelism situation, whether it's in a general workplace or a general environment, whether it's in a teaching or preaching situation, the heart needs to be in the right place when these sort of things are being discussed. You don't say it's you out of cheer, out of joy, but you could see Daniel, this is one of the reasons why he's appalled. This is one of the reasons why it took him a while to gather his thoughts, to gather his words, because this is someone that he cares for. And generally speaking, when we're talking about individuals, when we're talking about the work in the church or people in the church working in the world to show Christ, that should be our mindset. It should be the mindset of wanting goodwill and the best for someone when it comes to their soul specifically. And I think we find that in Daniel's moment here. He wishes that it was someone else. But since it's not, he has to represent the word of the Lord fairly and justly, and he has to present this information. So you got this big tree in the dream, and this tree has grown strong, it's grown large, it's reached the heights of the sky, it was visible. Trees are used frequently, especially in the Old Testament, in connection to people who have garnered great power and authority. In Ezekiel chapter 31, you read about the kings of Egypt. You read about them being compared to the cedars of Lebanon and so on, and how their trees have grown high, and God has allowed them to do those things. Trees are also provided in a good light in Psalm 1 verse 3. The tree that is planted by the living water, the flowing water, is able to grow and is able to do great things. And then in my mind, when I read about this tree that is a refuge or that provides home for the people who are around in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, I immediately think of the parable that Jesus provides in Matthew 13 about the mustard seed. It's the smallest of the seeds. It's the smallest when it comes to the trees and those, but then that mustard seed grows into great size. It grows into great strength, and it provides home for the birds, it provides refuge, it provides safety, all of those things. And so trees in the Old Testament can be used in a bad way, they can be used in a good way, but when you see this idea of a tree, it's talking about someone's strength, it's talking about someone's authority or something's strength or someone's or something's authority. Here, he's this great tree, you, O king, it is you, for you have become great and grown strong, verse 22, and your greatness has become even greater and reached to the sky, and your dominion to the end of the earth. Now, I believe as I spoke about it in the last time I taught in chapter 2, and David reiterated the fact that we're looking at it from Nebuchadnezzar's perspective and from the known world at this time. This is Nebuchadnezzar. In this region, there's no one greater. There's no one more powerful. He is the great king, talking about the East, talking about the Near East. Of course, there's other civilizations that are popping up in different parts of the world, but when it comes to the area of the Jews and their relationship with the region, Nebuchadnezzar is the top of the line. He's grown high. It's gone to the sky. He has dominion over the earth. But in the that the king saw a watcher. So you got this great tree, and then in the midst of this, you have this watcher. Now, Ezekiel talks about watchers, and watchers in Ezekiel, what's the purpose of the watchman or the watcher in Ezekiel? Anybody remember? Right. Right. Chapter 3. They are the watchmen. They're the sirens. They warn when danger's coming. And then there's the great discourse between if the watcher does his job, then he'll save lives, and if he doesn't do his job, then lives will end and their blood will be required of him. And of course, that illustration is oftentimes connected to our purpose in the New Testament. Here, this watchman is not a person. This watchman is someone else. It would be oftentimes likened to an angel, maybe an angel that his purpose is to watch the kings and to watch their responsibilities, to watch this nation. I think you could liken them maybe to the angels that we find in Abraham's life with Sodom and Gomorrah. They were sent by God to survey the situation in Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities and to pronounce a judgment on them to see if they were doing the things that were appropriate. I think that's probably what we're looking at here with this watcher. It's not one of the people of the earth, because who has dominion over all the people of the earth? Nebuchadnezzar does. This is someone that is above, or someone that is beyond his dominion, an angel that has the ability to pronounce judgment, and of course that judgment is ultimately brought to this dream, or brought to the tree by whose authority? Well, by the one that has authority over the watcher. When we're looking at the interpretation, this is God who has authority over this angel or over this watchman, and this watchman is speaking and judging on behalf of God as you're looking at it from that perspective. And so the king saw a watcher, a holy one, descending from heaven and saying, "Chop down the tree and destroy it. Yet leave the stump with its roots in the earth, but with a band of iron and bronze around it in the new grass of the field, and let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him share with the beasts of the fields until 7 periods of time pass over him." Now I want us to take a moment here, and I want us to go back and take a look at some of these images that are presented here. You have this concept of this watcher, a holy one descending from heaven, and his proclamation, his judgment is chop down the tree, destroy it. Chop it down, destroy it. Now, the axe is not an uncommon image. In the New Testament, when you see an axe that is used, and specifically it is taken to the roots, that is in reference to God tearing down those that he does not authorize, those who he does not recognize. Here, though, it says, chop down this tree, destroy the tree, yet leave the stump with its roots, is how the Legacy Standard Version renders there. Leave the stump with its roots in the earth. So chop down the tree, but don't take the axe to the roots. What happens when you take the axe to the roots? It kills the tree. Right, it's going to deny it.
Stump will sprout back out and regrow.
Right. In other words, as we would probably think about it today, chop it down, don't drill holes in it and pour gas in it, whatever the case you do, or however you handle that. But chop it down, but leave its roots in the earth. And leave its roots in the earth so that there is the ability to spring forth once again, that it could bring forth life. But notice what it says here, and this is one of the great discussions surrounding this chapter, and not because it has great impact on the interpretation, but simply because it's interesting to think about. He says, but with a band of iron and bronze around it. So you have this tree that is supposed to be chopped down, and then you have the tree stump that is left with its roots in the earth, and then there's this instruction to wrap an iron band with bronze around the stump. What do you think this means?
Protect the stump.
Okay, protection is one of the conversation.
So it can come back.
Okay, now what would make it protection?
It's a shield.
Okay, right. Some people have said that it would be used as a marker, so that if you see a tree stump that's worthless, they would cut it up. But it's used as a marker. It's also been said that it's used for protection. For instance, if you wrap it tight, then when it dries out, the stump doesn't have the opportunity to split and then decay and those things. Other people have presented it in the fashion of almost like a handcuff. So if Nebuchadnezzar's the tree, and then the tree's chopped and this band is put around the stump in the form of a handcuff or in the form of a locked-in position, they would argue that that's what we see where God has cut him down and he has handcuffed him in this position until he responds. I think there's a lot of different vantage points that are interesting in regards to that band, in regards to the things that could be connected to the band. I lean more towards the fact of to preserve the stump than I do the other side of the lockdown aspect. But the reason why I lean towards that is because it's talking about preserving the stump, as it says, chop it down, leave the roots in the ground, but wrap a band around it. Don't just leave it there. Wrap a band around it for its safety, for its marker, or for an indicator that this is still a valuable plant to a certain extent.
Well, there's one other thing. You're not totally destroying the kingdom.
Right. Right.
You're leaving a remnant to come back.
Right. And that's what he's going to discuss here as he gets further into this interpretation of what he means when it comes to this particular dream and some of those details. Of course, he kind of glosses over. He doesn't hit every one of the details, but yeah, there's going to be salvation for this tree for Nebuchadnezzar at some point in time. Any questions or comments about that? Any other ideas?
Well, you really think about what that tree represented.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from providing shade and shelter for animals to the birds.
Right.
That tree, being the king, he took care of everybody in the whole kingdom.
Right.
They were doing well. You cut the tree down, and what have you done to the kingdom?
It's going to send some chaos their way.
Right.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
So I know that the tree here represents like one heathen king, right?
Mhm.
The prophets could have said that about God's people, the nation of Israel,
Mhm.
when he essentially chopped them down to
Right.
let the remnant.
Yep.
I mean, it could apply to us just as well today.
Right.
We have that same pride or arrogance to
Right.
to ourselves. And so we also have to be careful and not just say, well, that applied to that wicked king or
Right.
whatever, prideful man.
Right. It applied to him because he was prideful. And therefore, anyone else who could be prideful could be put in the same type situation. That's a very good point. And no doubt about it, the children of Israel, the Jews, both connections, whether it's the northern kingdom or the southern kingdom or the unified kingdom, they could all have this same sort of illustration. Any other comments or thoughts? All right, so wrap the band around it. In the new grass of the field, so it's out and about. It's not under the care in a garden sort of sense. It's in the new grass, and let him. This is an interesting switch because we go from the tree, chop the tree down. This is the inanimate object which represents Nebuchadnezzar, and now the dream says, let him. It goes from the tree to the individual. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him share with the beast of the field until 7 periods of time pass. At verse 24, this interpretation, O king, and this is the resolution of the Most High which has reached my Lord the king. Here's in essence what has been brought to you, Nebuchadnezzar, is what David has said. And he says, because of your activity, this is what will happen. Verse 25, you'll be driven from mankind, and your place of habitation will be with the beasts of the fields, and you will be given grass to eat like cattle, and you will be drenched with the dew of heaven. And 7 periods of time will pass over you until you know what the Most High, or until you know, that the Most High is the powerful ruler over kingdom of man and gives it to whomever he wishes. Here's your punishment. You're the tree. And this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to be cut down, and you're going to be sent down, and you're going to be like the beast of the field. Verse 26, and in that, they said, leave the stump with the roots of the tree. Your kingdom will endure for you after you know that it is heaven that rules with power. Your kingdom's still going to be there, and it's going to endure during that time, but it will also endure until you get to that point of realization. So, this is a dream that has come to Nebuchadnezzar because Nebuchadnezzar has acted in a foolish, prideful way. I believe this is directly in response to what we read in Daniel chapter 3, where Nebuchadnezzar erects that gold statue. It could be multiple things in Nebuchadnezzar's life that he has done as a king, but I believe from the context that is directly what it is being spoken about. He erects this. There's this great deal about the worship, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the fiery furnace, all that sort of thing, and now he's getting these dreams, these visions. And the vision is this. You're a great king, talking about power and authority, but you're going to be chopped down from heaven. But in that time, you will be sent out as a beast in the field. You're going to act like one until you realize or until you understand that God rules over the kingdoms of man. The ultimate discussion behind this interpretation is the sovereignty of God over man's world, over the physical world. Now, that discussion is not a simple and easy and light discussion. That discussion is very deep. That discussion is very time-consuming, and one of the reasons why is because we get to look into the authority and the mind of God in the limited information that we have from Scripture talking about the authority and the mind of God. And then we're left to reason and to wrap our minds around how God works in his sovereignty in the realms of man. If I could put it simply like this, it's pretty clear here in Daniel chapter 4. God is not approving of this king's activity, and so God's going to teach this king a lesson, because if he's ruling over all the earth, who can teach him a lesson? Who does he have to answer to? Well, in Nebuchadnezzar's mind, it's no one. God is going to share with them, not true. You will understand this from heaven. You will understand this from on high. All this has of course, been told to the king that heaven rules with power. Any questions about verses 19 through 26?
Just thinking. That was a triple whammy.
Yeah.
Take down a tree, which is your kingdom.
Right.
Then you're gonna be, everybody's gonna be pulled away from you. And then on top of that, you're gonna be roaming the field like a cat.
Right.
And that, you see images of that, it's kind of hard to comprehend. How that would
Right.
be, but it says the Lord gave him the mind.
Right. Especially here in a couple verses when it takes place, the description of him is hard for me to process, especially because of how he's described in the particulars about his hair and his fingernails and things like that. And so as we continue looking in verse 27, we see his exhortation. So this is his explanation, Daniel's explanation to the king. Here's what you're experiencing. Now, here's what I want you to know, king. As you understand what you are seeing now, verse 27, therefore, O king, may my advice seem good to you. Break away now from your sins by doing righteousness, and from your iniquities, your guilt, by showing mercy to the poor, in case there might be a prolonging of your prosperity. In other words, this is coming, Nebuchadnezzar. Here's what I would encourage you to do. Make it right. Now, this is something I think about. How was Nebuchadnezzar supposed to make it right? Travel to Jerusalem?
Being righteous and showing mercy.
Being righteous and showing mercy. That's what it says. It doesn't necessarily indicate anything else. And in fact, the answer that I boiled down to wasn't become a proselyte of the Jews or anything like that, because Nebuchadnezzar technically would still be under what law? The patriarchal law. And so the idea would be to turn to God, and whatever God decides, that's what you need to do. And here in the discussion, in the exhortation, it's turn away, do righteousness. Turn away from your iniquities, show mercies to the poor. And in doing so, you may prolong your prosperity. Now, I think that Daniel is not saying in doing so you will escape the punishment. But in doing so, you may have the opportunity to continue in your prosperity for a while longer. So as we get into verses 28 through 30, we get to the punishment, starting in verse 28. In verses 28 through 30, we find his pride. Verses 28 through 30, his pride. So, Nebuchadnezzar has the information. He also has instruction, encouragement to do what's right. And notice what he does in verse 28. All this reached Nebuchadnezzar the king. At the end of the 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. The king answered and said, is this not Babylon, or is this not Babylon the Great, which I myself have built in a royal house by strength and by my power, and for the glory of my majesty? While the words was still in the king's mouth, it says in verse 31, a voice came from heaven. Now I want us to stop there. So, period of time has gone by. How long does it say? About a year. 12 months, and it says he was walking on the roof, and it dawned on him. Has he been thinking about it? I think so. It dawned on him. Haven't I done all this? Haven't I? Now, maybe it's dawned on him thinking about the interpretation in the dream. Maybe he's just going back through a cycle of this pride of his majesty and his glory. Haven't I done all this? He's walking on his roof. No doubt he can see what's going on around. Haven't I built this? Haven't I done this? And then in verses 31 through 33, we see his punishment. While the words was in the king's mouth, a voice came from heaven saying, King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is said, the kingdom has been removed from you. Not a dream, not a vision, not some sort of extracurricular showing of this, like writing on the wall or anything like that. A voice from heaven spoke to him and said, you're done. This is it. Now, I immediately think of God interrupting another individual, Peter, when he was saying, it's good for us to be here while Jesus, Moses, and Elijah were there. Let us raise 3 places of honor, 3 tabernacles, 3 places of rest, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah, in Matthew chapter 17 and verse 5. And it says, and while he was speaking, a voice came from heaven and said, this is my beloved Son, hear him. God has interrupted mankind. He has interrupted Nebuchadnezzar in his words at this moment in time. And he says, your kingdom has been removed from you. It doesn't stop there. Verse 32, and you will be driven away from mankind. Your place of your habitation will be with the beasts of the fields. You will be given grass to eat like cattle, and 7 periods of time will pass over you until you know that the Most High is the powerful ruler over the kingdom of mankind and gives it to whomever he wishes. Verse 33, immediately the word concerning Nebuchadnezzar was what? It was accomplished. It happened. This voice came down and said, your kingdom's removed. Here's what's going to happen. And immediately Nebuchadnezzar was put in that situation. He was driven away from mankind. Why? He was driven away from mankind because he became like what? Like a beast, like an animal. This is your king who's lived in civility, who's lived in honor and prosperity, and now he's starting to act like a beast. He has the heart of a beast and all of those things. He's sent out. He is driven away from them and began to eat grass like cattle. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven. And notice the descriptors here. Until his hair had grown like eagle's feathers and his nails like bird's claws. This wasn't just a period that happened, or excuse me, he didn't just like werewolf it. In my mind, where he was human and then boom, an animal. He started acting like an animal and then he was driven out, and over this process, his hair grew long, he was drenched, he was eating grass, his nails grew like claws or like birds' talons. This is not a good look for King Nebuchadnezzar. It's not a good look for him as a king. It's not a good look for him as a man, but he's not in his right mind. He has had his mental faculties removed from him at this moment in time so that he could be punished. He's been driven out. He's acting like an animal. He's living amongst the animals.
God has been awful. Well, I just lost the word. I'm going to say patient with him for all of this time up to now, and he is still trying to show him that God is God. He's the one in power.
Right.
And bring him to the humility he needs to be a real leader of men. It's just unbelievable how much, if you look at it, how much time and patience God has spent with this man.
Right. Absolutely. And I also want to notice here that while the kingdom is being preserved, Nebuchadnezzar's not a beast. And when you get driven out into the wilderness, what situation do you find yourself in? Find yourself in a predator-prey situation. Survival. He's eating grass, so he's not taking on the carnivore type mindset. But would you imagine that there were carnivores and predators around him?
Yeah.
So in this instance where God has punished him and has removed his abilities, has removed his prosperity, has God also provided safety for him?
Yes.
I believe so.
Those nails.
Right. Well,
Be able to take care of him.
Yeah, I mean, that may have helped a little bit. I think God provides safety and protection for him because of the end of the prophecy or the end of the dream. When you realize it, your kingdom's there to endure and wait for you.
Yeah, he's going to protect him because it's going to bring him back.
Right. Even when we go through trial and tribulation, even when sometimes we leave the mindset and the heart of man and we turn into the mindset and the heart of a beast, so to speak, I think it's important for us to understand while we have a period, while we have this period before Christ comes back, God still desires that we come back home to him. And God has prepared an opportunity for our life with him to be endured and for it to be waiting there if we so choose to acknowledge him and to come back home. Any questions or comments about that? All right, next section, starting in verse 34, going through the end of the chapter, verses 34 through 36, we see his placement talking about Nebuchadnezzar. He goes through this and he is placed back in the position where he should be. But this is the restoration of Nebuchadnezzar. Oftentimes this chapter is titled the rise and fall of Nebuchadnezzar. It's not just the fall, it's the rise, the fall, and the rise again of Nebuchadnezzar in this instance. In verse 34 it says, "But at the end of those days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up my eyes towards heaven, and my knowledge returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever, for his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation." Does someone else have another translation in verse 34? It says, "At the end of those days."
It says at the end of time,
At the end of time? Okay.
everlasting dominion.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the end of that period which he was given, 7 periods, right? And so at the end of this punishment, that's when this happened. It says that his eyes lifted up. He blessed the Most High God and, of course, gave him this honor. Verse 35, "And all inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, but he has done, or he does according to his will in the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And no one can strike against his hand or say to him, 'What have you done?'" No one can challenge God. Now, who's saying this? The one who couldn't be challenged on earth. No one can challenge this God. And the reason why is because God showed him that he's in control. Verse 36. "And at that time my knowledge returned to me." And I think that's interesting and something that we need to remember about this equation. His knowledge was taken away. He became a madman to a certain extent. His knowledge returned to him. "His majesty and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom, and my high officials and my nobles began seeking me out. So I was reestablished in my kingdom, and extraordinary greatness was added to me." The restoration of Nebuchadnezzar. After a period of time, God says, okay, and Nebuchadnezzar has learned his lesson. And because of that, God keeps his word, restores him to where he once was, restores him to his former position. And then in verse 37, the praise that he provides. Of course, you could say verses 34 through 36 were praise, but this specifically is the praise of Nebuchadnezzar. First person once again, "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are true and his ways just, and he is able to humble those who walk in pride." Now, did this stick in Nebuchadnezzar's world, in his life? I'm not sure. We could say actively that he became a faithful follower of God after these events, that there were no more issues regarding him in his life. But at least for this moment in time, God has gotten across to him. He's gotten through to him. And Nebuchadnezzar responds with honor and praise to the King of heaven. And I find that interesting, that he refers to him as the King of heaven, because he's the king of the earth, and he thinks that way. And so the only one who could be over him is the king of a greater realm, which would be God himself. And so thank you for your attention.